Well, our moms think we're funny.
Hey everyone, I'm Acomi.
Hey everybody, this is Turk182.
And I'm gonna keep that intro in anyway, because that's funny.
No. God damn you. I swear.
You should
Crab in a barrel, I swear.
know better by now. When the record button gets hit, it's staying in, baby.
So, hey everybody, how's it going? Thank you for joining us once again as we come to the conclusion of our character analysis, character breakdown, peeling back the layers, reeling through the years, holding back the tears, as we talk about...
Ozymandias!
Alright, Ozymandias,
the
sir.
world's smartest man.
The world's smartest man.
Possibly homosexual.
Yeah, I'll have to investigate further. I mean, he might call himself the world's smartest man, but to me, he's no more of a threat than, the world's smartest termite. That's just how I feel about him.
You know what they say, smartest man on the cinder. So.
Why would I save a grill? I no longer have a steak in it. I gotta find that. I've got to find that it wasn't a meme. It was just a cartoon, but it was hilarious. But yeah.
Adrian Veidt, the last of the Watchmen for our character analysis.
Yeah, I don't want to say he's the most important, but he's the guy, man. I mean, he's the one. This whole book is basically I don't want to say about him, but due to him. It's all due to Veidt. I mean, he's the one that put everything in motion.
Yeah, like he's essentially the MacGuffin of the story. He's like what's propelling everything forward. Everybody else is just kind of existing.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they're whether they know it or not, whether they like it or not, they're all dancing to his fife.
Good way of putting it.
Oh, thank you. Good point, detective. So
Veidt.
I was gonna say, where do we want to start with Veidt? With some of the other people, we were like for Rorschach, we said, we don't want to start with this yet. We don't want to start with that yet.
Right,
where do we want to start with Veidt?
With Veidt, I guess we should start with what we see when he first comes into the story, because he's handled the Keene Act differently than any of the other characters.
That's true.
When the government steps up and says, no more masked fighters, you've all got to come public with your identities, he does it. But then he capitalizes off of it.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, yeah, that's me. Now buy my toy line. Now, buy my exercise regimen, all this stuff.
Yeah, and he becomes a multi-millionaire. Not that was ever in question, because, look what we're talking about here, right? He's the smartest man in the world, so obviously something was going to come of him.
I'd say besides Manhattan, he's really the only other super of the group.
I guess you could call him a super. Because even though his abilities are I don't want to say man-made, but they're natural. He just happens to have a greater intellect than anyone else, for the time being, until someone else smarter comes along. Or maybe he's not like the world's smartest man, but maybe he's the world's smartest man and most devious man. It's like I could, if I took Stephen Hawkingson and let's say give me somebody else that's really
Elon Musk, is he smart?
No. I hate to go to Neil deGrasse Tyson, but so let's say Einstein, right?
Okay.
So let's say Stephen Hawkingson and Einstein, and yes, I know his name is Stephen Hawkins. I just use that from Rick and Morty,
Right.
So what separates the two of them? It's where one will take a situation, and I'm not saying that this is the case for them, but where one will take a situation and say, okay, I'm going to read this, and this is how it plays out logically to here. Mm-hmm. And as smart as I am, though, my own moral compass will stop me from seeing beyond this line. Yeah. Because what lies beyond that line are decisions and thoughts that I don't want to have to make, as where the other person will see beyond that because they're like, I'm willing to cross that line to make that decision. So if, let's say we're talking about the atomic bomb, mm-hmm. One person is going to say, okay, we're trying to stop the war, and I'm only willing to go this far because after that there's going to be there's going to be deaths, there's going to be bloodshed, there's going to be a toll mm-hmm. that I don't want to pay.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other person will go beyond that. So they may both be the same in intellect, but one is willing to go and think and make decisions beyond the other one. It doesn't make them any smarter. It's just they're willing to go that extra, that extra step. And I think that's the thing with Veidt. He's not necessarily maybe the smartest man in the Watchmen universe. He calls himself that, but he's the one that's going to go and think, past that barrier that other people stop at, because
he definitely lacks the restraint that the average person has. Now, my counterpoint to the argument that he's a super is he did catch a bullet.
True, but to that I would say a guy that's well trained, in his body, he's smart. And again, he also says, I wasn't sure that was going to work.
Yeah.
So he was like, if someone shoots me, at this range, this is what I could possibly catch the bullet if I moved in this fashion. But of course, it's untested.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess you could call him a super. So this is something we didn't do with any of the other ones, but actually, when we started, I pulled up the Watchmen movie, the Zack Snyder Watchmen movie, and it's playing. And I just want to make a note here. In each one of Zack Snyder's movies, he normally, I shouldn't say each one of them.
This is the director's cut, yeah?
I'm not quite sure.
Because this fight scene's gone on a little bit longer than what I'm used to. 2 hours 42. Yeah, it's the director's cut. Here's a hidden smiley face blood spatter that I've never seen before.
Oh, yeah. I would say in most of Zack Snyder's movies, he puts like a nod or an homage to some of his other films. Mm-hmm. So when the coffee cup scene it hit the door, his apartment number was 3001. Yeah. But when it hits the door, it takes the 1 off, so it's 300.
300, nice.
So anyway, I was looking here in Watchmen at the interview that Veidt does, where he's kind of talking, about all this stuff, and it's interesting. There's a question here, where Nova says, so how do you get to be a superhero? Were your parents rich? I mean, did they give you advantages? He goes, no more than I could help. My mother left me a lot of money when she died, but I gave it to charity when I was 17. I wanted to prove that I could accomplish anything I wanted, starting from absolutely nothing. Also, I wanted to free myself of concern for money. Consequently, it's never been a problem for me. To answer your question, you get to be a superhero by believing in the hero within you and summoning him or her forth by an act of will. Believing in yourself and your own potential is the first step to realizing that potential. Alternatively, you could do as John did, fall into a nuclear reactor and hope for the best. On the whole, I think I prefer to stick to my own methods. So it's kind of interesting where it's like, well, the first step to becoming a hero is to just, think that you're a hero. Believe to be a hero. And the kind of like positive affirmation thing, which in itself is like it's not incorrect, but just believing that you can do it doesn't mean that you can do it,
Right.
We have so many people out there that believe that they're smart, and it's like, but you're not, and you make really bad decisions.
Yeah.
And this is interesting. Nova says, what sort of world do you see it being in the future? And Veidt says, that depends upon us. Each and every one of us. Futurology interests me interests me perhaps more than any other single subject, and as such I devote a great deal of time to its study. Even so, technology is progressing at an ever-accelerating pace, and by early next century, I would hesitate to predict any limitations upon what we might be capable of. I would say, without hesitation, that a new world is within our grasp, filled with unimaginable experiences and possibilities if only we want it badly enough. Not a utopia. I don't believe that any species could continue to grow and keep from stagnation without some adversity, but a society with a more human basis where the problems that beset us are at least new ones.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it's kind of interesting when you read that, and he says, I don't believe in a utopia, but at the end of it, you kind of believe that there's a utopia,
Right.
but he says, but it's we like you said, you can't be stagnant, which I agree, you can't be stagnant,
Mm-hmm.
but what new adversities after the last page of Watchmen is he going to introduce?
Right. Right.
Because they're going to be things, because he's basically running a show now. People don't know, but he's running a show. So what is he going to introduce? Because knowing Veidt, whatever he introduces as an adversity, he's already found the answer to.
Right.
You're
right.
going to struggle with it because that's what he wants you to do.
Mm-hmm.
But he already has the answer. So if you don't come up with an answer fast enough, and when I say fast enough, like within like the number of years he thinks there should be one, or
Right.
if the struggle is going on too long to where people are starting to drift, away from focusing on this to other things, like where it's like, okay, this is unsolvable, so now my attention's going elsewhere.
Right.
Then that's when he would drop the solution.
Yeah.
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 So I wonder what comes next. What comes after the squid? What comes after the energy crisis is over?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Which I guess the show would kind of explore that, right?
So that's what I love about the Watchmen TV series, which is in the TV series, it just inexplicably, randomly rains baby squids.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
And it was like they were being alerted, and people would roll up their windows, and these baby squids would just rain down, and then it would rain for, I don't know, maybe a couple minutes, and then they would just evaporate, or they would just melt away into nothing.
Yeah.
But the idea is that this one squid, one time, seems like a fluke, 10 years later.
Right, right.
I no longer have a threat of that. But if it occasionally rains baby squids, the threat is still there.
Yeah.
Again, that in itself though isn't enough, but there has to be something more.
Right.
In the TV show though, Ozymandias has been removed. He's actually in a prison, and it's really odd, this prison that he's in, where he has these, and it's almost like in a prison, it's almost like he's in retirement, but then you realize that these people that are they're like the maid and the butler that attend to him.
Right.
Basically, he goes through the exact same thing every day, and these people are clones. And he randomly killed them for different reasons and stuff. It's weird, but then it all makes sense once you watch the series. It all makes sense, ties together. But
yeah,
so this is not answered in that TV series, but in a sense, it's almost like it's almost like he had put himself in a position where he no longer felt challenged, and he needed a new challenge.
Yeah.
Something, and the thing is, when you have a guy like that, and I think this is probably kind of going back to Ozymandias himself, is I think this is one of the problems with being the smartest man in the world is once you get to a point at the end of Watchmen, where he has kind of created what we would immediately mistake as a utopia.
Right.
That when you get to that point, if I've solved all the problems that have been presented to me by the world, and I'm the smartest man in the world, the only other problems that I can present are ones that I make myself, but then if I make them myself, I already have a solution.
Right.
So I don't have a challenge because there has to be someone smarter than me to create a problem or a challenge for me to solve.
Yeah.
And I don't have it. And I think that could drive someone mad.
It's like playing chess with yourself.
Right. You know, you think that it would be fun or easy or whatever, but it's like, no, it's not.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, and we've talked before that there's not a ton to really say about Veidt because so much of what he's all about is established in the last chapter, where he basically says, "Here's who I am. Here's why I did it." Beyond that, he's not really in the book that much, to be totally honest.
So let's hit on some key points of Veidt, because there's a lot to really be said about him, and I think I think that the thing with Veidt, you say everything's kind of really revealed in the last chapter, is that even though we don't see a lot of Veidt, we don't know a lot about Veidt, and so for example, everything we learn about a comedian, we learn from other people.
Right, right.
But Veidt knows all of that. Even though these people think that these are their stories, he knows them all. It's like not to say there's no secrets from him, but like he already knows that. So you think this is like let's say for example, comedian killing a woman in Vietnam, right? Manhattan's not going to tell that story. He's not going to sit around and be like, oh, it's like
gather around, kiddies.
Uncle Doc, tell us about what happened when you were in Vietnam. Yeah. It's like, well, and one time I was in this bar and the comedian, you're not going to believe this, right? Like, no, that's a story between two. And who else saw that exchange? No one, in quotes, but Veidt knows it.
Yeah.
He knows that. And you kind of find out in the end when they're going there, it's like he's got files and everything. Yeah, and he even talks about like, I researched this, I researched that, I knew all. So he knows all this stuff.
Right, yeah.
Whether he says anything about it, or even does anything about it right away, he knows. And that's I think the interesting thing about him is that you aren't aware that he knows until the end, where it's like he knows so much.
Right,
so
right.
What I want to do is I want to go to the funeral where Captain Metropolis is there, and I think it's interesting if we look at that scene. So I'm looking at page 9 of was this chapter 2, chapter 3?
Should be chapter 2.
Yeah, chapter 2. So we've got the comedian now in his new outfit. Rorschach is still regular, normal Rorschach. You can tell by the way he's standing. His coat's open. He looks clean. Hands in his pockets. Night Owl's there. What's really great about this scene is that Manhattan's already scoping out. What's her name?
Lori, yeah.
Yeah.
Chasing jailbait.
And comedian's not really paying attention, and Ozymandias is there, and he's looking kind of rather attentive. But Captain Metropolis is the one that really looks so out of place there.
Yeah.
Amongst the others, costume wise, he's very much an old school, like this is how we handle ruffians.
Yeah, he looks like a pulp hero.
Right.
It's very, very pulpy.
And
of course, that's where Rorschach has the normal speech bubble too. Is the next page.
Yep. So he's like, calling themselves a crime buster. So Ozymandias is is just this listening to all this. And then the first time he speaks is, after comedian makes a couple comments, and then he says, and Rorschach, and he goes, surely that's just an organizational problem, where the right person coordinating the group, and then that's when, the comedian steps up and he starts talking about, this is the world, you don't really live it, or you don't know how things go. And I think that was probably, and this is for a guy that's really smart, which you see a lot of people that are really smart, but they see things and they know things, but they haven't really lived them and experienced them,
Right.
And it's like those people that orchestrate like tactics and war and strategy from hundreds of thousands of miles away,
Right,
in a
right.
room, but have never actually been on the battlefield, where he's never actually been, quote unquote, in the shit. He's never lived in the real world, even though when you're a genius and I give away all my money at the age of 17 to make my own way, but you're a genius.
Mm-hmm.
You made your own way and were probably back to where you started from within 2 years.
Right.
So
right.
you weren't really struggling like other people because you already, even from the time he gave away his money, his fortune, he started from a blank slate. He already had a plan. He had something orchestrated in his head. He knew where he was going.
Yeah.
But when a comedian's like, it's like you don't understand. Like you don't live in the real world. And it was he says, Ozymandias says, I think I'm as well informed as anyone given correct handling. None of the world's problems are insurmountable. All it takes is a little intelligence. And he's like, and that's when comedians like, do you think that this is it? Like, you've got all the knowledge there, but you don't have any of the practicality of it.
Right. It's the difference between knowledge and wisdom.
Right. And that's what I think puts Ozymandias in his path. Like, he's like, yeah, I don't have that. I don't have I know it, but it's like I expect things to go this way because logically, and when I put all the pieces together, like mathematically it goes this way. But the one thing I'm forgetting is the human response.
Right.
You know, especially when a person's pushed so far, you expect them to act this way, but sometimes they don't. You know, and I think that's what he learns from this interaction right here, especially from the comedian. And here's the one thing about this is, if you look at it, this is comedian pre-Scar.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so it had to be before Nam. Wow.
And I think that's when Ozymandias really took a step and was like, he stopped looking at everything as numbers.
Right.
And equations, and started looking at them as being people.
Mm-hmm.
And that changed everything. I think that changed everything for him.
And of course, the last words of the flashback is somebody has to do it, don't you see? Somebody has to save the world. So yeah, so then he's kind of out of the picture for a little while after that. Which it's interesting, like the first few times you read through the book, it doesn't really feel out of place. It's just like, well, he's the rich guy, you know?
Right.
He's up in his tower. He doesn't have to really be down here involved. Because ostensibly, like on the surface, he's one of the few who's not fucked up, which, I mean, I guess he's fucked up in his own way when you look through it again, but...
It's interesting here, when you look at page 16... which we're not going to talk anymore about 16 and 17, as much as we love those, love those pages. But when we look at page 16, you've got Ozymandias, Dr. Manhattan, and you've got the Night Owl.
Yep.
Right? All right there. And anybody at the funeral that looked at this and said, okay, I've got Ozymandias, or, Adrian Veidt, who used to be the hero called Ozymandias.
Right.
There, front and center at the coffin. Dr. Manhattan, obviously, superhero. And then I got this guy here. Who else could this guy be? I mean, they're right there. Like, they're all right there. And it's not like anyone's questioning the other person, like, how did you know him? Why were you close to this guy?
Right.
And even though no one knows that this guy was the comedian, you put those three of them together, it's like, who else could he have been?
Right,
you
yeah.
know?
Like people should have put two and two together. It's like, well, wait a minute, why'd these guys show up?
But I think the thing is that the people there at the funeral, like, they're all either going to be military, because of comedian's military background.
Right.
In which case they wouldn't ask any questions. Or I guess that was it. I mean, I don't think he would have really had any other friends. So that would have just been that they would just been military guys, and
I suppose so, yeah.
I mean, they were just,
It is my understanding, sir, that you're not allowed to ask me that.
So
yeah, like, he doesn't show up when Manhattan goes to Mars.
Mm-hmm. Because technically he's already there.
So yeah, after Manhattan goes to Mars and Dan and Laurie start spending time together. Then you have the scene with the assassin.
Well, I was gonna say we've got when Rorschach comes to visit it.
Oh yeah, when Rorschach visits Moloch.
No, when Rorschach visits Ozymandias.
Well, yeah, that's at the very beginning. That's chapter 1.
Right. I was going to go back to that because there's just like a little bit of here when they're talking. So Rorschach just shows up, which I think is just interesting. How he just comes up the side of the building, and he's there, but he leaves through the window. I like he's like, Veidt says the comedian's dead. But why? It's like, you were always supposed to be the world's smartest man, Veidt. You tell me. That's such a great line. It's just like, why are you asking me? Like, you should already know the answer to this, right? Why are you asking me to go solve a crime that technically you should already know the answer to? I like this. Like, I never claimed to be anybody special, Rorschach. I just have some overenthusiastic PR men. And it's like, yeah, but that's not quite true. You have claimed to be somebody special.
Yeah. Yeah, the more I see of this playing in the background, I don't think I've ever seen the director's cut of this, because these are a lot of scenes I don't recognize.
Really?
Yeah, I need to watch that.
I like how Rorschach judges him. He says that, because this goes back to what you were talking about Rorschach before, when he's like, I'm not here to the guy was a hero or a soldier.
Yeah.
I'm not here to.
How he was a patriot. I'm not here to pass judgment on the possible moral lapses of a patriot.
Veidt calls comedian Nazi, and he goes, he stood up for his country, Veidt. Never let anybody retire him. Never cashed in on his reputation. Never set up a company selling posters and diet books and toy soldiers based on himself. Never became a prostitute. If that makes him a Nazi, you might as well call me a Nazi too.
Oh, Rorschach. Lamb.
So here's something very interesting about this scene that we never, because we talked about this a lot, kind of indirectly. But if you look there, Rorschach takes his hat off.
Yeah.
In the building. And it's only when he goes to leave that he puts his hat back on.
Yeah.
That's kind of telling about him. But anyway,
it's just his face. The mask is his face.
So this is interesting here. He says, Rorschach, I know we were never friends, but even so, you're being unfair. Nobody retired me. I chose to quit adventuring and go public 2 years before the police strike made the Keene Act necessary. And he goes, yes, good timing. I came here to warn you about the mass killer so you didn't end up the smartest man in the morgue, but I guess there's worse things to end up as, be seeing you. So he says, I chose to do all this stuff before the Keene Act made it necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So was it that he saw the writing on the wall? Or was it that he made the Keene Act? Did he orchestrate that?
Yeah.
To get them out of the way?
Maybe so. That's an interesting thought.
And then we've got there, on the desk, as he's looking out the window, on the desk it says, nuclear doomsday clock stands at 5 to 12. Weren't experts. Geneva talks to discuss, Geneva talks to U.S. reference to discuss Dr. Manhattan. It's like, and I wish I could read what's on that computer screen there.
Yeah. I was looking closer at it, but it's all just squares.
So when you look at him, it's like, and we could just be reading more into it, but I kind of have to ask, how far back did this plan? We you and I said that, from the moment that comedian did all this stuff and he set the map on fire and left, right? Mm-hmm. That's really kind of what started to spark this idea of how do you make the world better? Right, it's not through what these guys are doing here. And in some way, Veidt had to have thought that being a part of the Crime Busters, was a good idea to fight crime and to save the world, starting at street level, and then as we start to eradicate the street crime, and then we'll move up. In his mind, again, just because you're the smartest man in the world doesn't mean you have all the answers. It's just that, you can look at a problem, you can solve it, but, you have to be able to recognize the problem.
Right.
So at that moment there, he realized that the street stuff was small time. The bigger problem was this: if you eliminate the bigger threat, you eliminate the smaller threats.
Right,
You know,
right.
so there's no street crime if I solve the energy crisis. You know, problem.
Yeah.
If we don't have big wars, then that makes people generally happier. They have jobs. They have this. That eliminates the street crime. So it's that the kind of like crime equivalent of like a trickle down theory.
Right.
Only
Right.
in real life that actually makes sense. So then you have to wonder, like, how far back did his plan start? Like, I think it germinated there, all right? That was the inception. And then was it like getting the people out of the way so he could start to enact stuff? Because if you've got Dan running out being the night owl, you've got Dr. Manhattan doing his thing, you're in my way for my plan. I need you guys out of the way. I need you in a place where you're controlled and contained.
Right, right.
If I get Night Owl off the street, if I get the comedian, he's doing government stuff anyway, so I don't really have to worry about him.
Right, right.
Doc Manhattan, if I take you and put your talents and your powers to other use, which is not out there in the streets blowing people up in nightclubs,
Right.
then you all are you're all contained in a way that allows me to do what I need to do. Rorschach, you're not a part of this equation at all.
Right.
Like, no, what you do, like Rorschach never rises above, except for this part, he never rises above street level.
Right.
So whatever you do is not going to impact my master plan.
Right, right.
So if I enact the Keene Act and I'm ahead of the curve, right? So by revealing myself 2 years earlier, no one's looking at me. I've already put all my cards on the table.
Right.
Now all you guys are going to hiding, but now what I've done is I put you all in a place where I know where you are and I can see you and you're not in my way.
Right, yeah.
So I kind of feel like maybe he was really responsible for the Keene Act, because that was what he needed to do to get those pieces, the wild cards, in the right spot so he could do what he needed to do.
Yeah, yeah. I'm looking here in the last chapter, or I guess second to last chapter, page 18. He says, I'm trying to improve the world like when I started out. My first case made it seem possible to end justice by demolishing crime syndicates. This notion that criminals monopolized evil was itself demolished by my second case. Researching my masked predecessors, I investigated the mid-50s disappearance of Hooded Justice. An operative, government sources revealed, had tried unearthing him back then, reporting failures. Unearthing the operative, tracking him to Dockland, proved easier. Edward Blake. As intelligent men facing lunatic times, we were very alike, despising each other instantly. Goes over their encounter, his fight with the comedian. Where else is it that he talks about the meeting?
Where he talks about the meeting?
Oh, here we go. Yeah, so over on page 19, I fought only the symptoms, leaving the disease itself unchecked. I despised myself, my sham crusade, knowing mankind's problems, I blinded myself to them. I felt helpless against forces greater than any I'd anticipated. Too cowardly to confront my anxieties, I had life's black comedy explained to me by the comedian himself at the Crime Busters fiasco in '66. I'm sure you remember, he discussed nuclear war's inevitability, described my future role as the smartest guy on the cinder, and opened my eyes. Only the best comedians can accomplish that. I remember the charred mat between my fingers, Nelson saying someone's got to save the world, his tremulous complaining voice. That's when I understood. That's when it hit me.
I love that line that you just said there is like, only the best comedians can do that.
Yeah.
You know, which is like when you, like, if you look at like any kind of like documentary or not necessarily documentary, but when comedians are talking, they're like, the job of a comedian is to tell a joke, but also to open your eyes to stuff like, the best comedians tell a joke about what's going on. It's, it's that spoonful of sugar to show you like, this is what's really going on. I can make light of it so that you can accept it easier, and then afterwards you look and be like, oh shit, yeah, this is really what's going on.
Yeah, yeah.
Only in the case of the comedian, like he's a comedian in name only.
That's true, yeah. But yeah, it looks like he talks a little bit more on 21. It seems like he started working the plan right away. Because he says that he'd been brutally brought nose to nose with mankind's mortality, and so his first step was to stand back as far as he could to view the problem from a fresh perspective. His vista widening with his comprehension, to see East and West locked in an escalating arms spiral, the mutual terror and suspicion mounting with the missiles, making the possibility of disarmament progressively more remote. So it seems like as soon as they had that Crime Busters meeting, he just started thinking, and that started building the plan.
And so it's like, from what you were just saying, he'd only fought 2 crimes up until then.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
And then he was like, yeah, this is not working.
And really, that second crime was just him running into the comedian. And of course the comedian, quote-unquote, mistook him for a villain and tried to beat the shit out of him, because it's the comedian. And yeah. Let's see. He talks about, like at the bottom of page 21, he talks about the mathematics of the situation. Sooner or later, conflict was inevitable. Without a practical solution at hand, what use is it to suddenly notice the perils of the situation? So, yeah, he got started on it, like, from 1966 on up.
And then, so, it's kind of like the Darth Sidious Emperor Palpatine thing, where it's like, 18 years.
Mm-hmm.
18 years, I'm just slowly putting all the pieces together to enact my plan. And it's kind of interesting. I think you and I talked about this. For several decades, James Cameron had wanted to make the movie Battle Angel Alita, which of course became Alita Battle Angel.
Yeah.
And I think it was maybe around the time of Terminator 2. He was saying like one of my next movies is going to be like, an adaptation of the manga Battle Angel Alita.
Right.
And he kept it, and he kept talking about it. And I think that even came before Avatar, like where he was talking about making this movie.
Yeah.
So we don't get Battle Angel Alita or Alita Battle Angel for like 20 years or so later.
Right.
Because he was like, I had to wait until the technology existed to make the movie the way I saw it.
Right.
And he could have made it any time, between then. Even when you look at like what he did with Terminator 2, what he did with Avatar, it's like, it's, for my vision, we're still not quite there yet. So he's holding on to this thing forever, which is kind of interesting. And it's like when you look at something like a Darth Sidious, you look at like an Adrian Veidt, and you're thinking, like who could just just work that slowly over time, and then you say, well, look at James Cameron, in this case he's not working anything, but kind of he is, like kind of the stuff he did for creating like Avatar, where I say he created, but working with the technology to be able to say, I've got this special camera here that shows me, not fully done, but what you guys look like in your CGI forms as I'm recording you just in your regular selves with your dotted faces and stuff like that. That's amazing.
Right.
And you're like, and he kind of helped to pioneer that because he needed it for the movie.
Right.
Which, just if you just think about that, like, I can look on the screen here, and as you're moving, it's rendering you in this image that, or a rough version of that's fascinating.
Oh yeah.
And then you look at something like Veidt and like I said in Palpatine, where like I'm slowly putting all this stuff together, and I have to do it slow because it has to stay under the radar.
Right.
And so I have to move at at this rate to make sure. And even though I want things to move faster, it has to take its time.
Right.
And part of that for Veidt is also like, the clock, the doomsday clock is slowly ticking, counting towards midnight. And so you have to wonder if somewhere along the way, did he do little things to keep the hand from moving faster than he needed to? Like, keep it from getting one step closer because I'm not right there yet?
Right.
Or was everything calculated to the point to, like, and I, like, maybe he had everything ready right where it needed to be, but he's like, I can't do it yet. A minute to midnight is not close enough. I have to wait until we get 30 seconds to midnight, till we get like 10 seconds to midnight, because that's when you're the most desperate. And that's when you're going to be the most susceptible to what I have to offer you.
Yeah.
So was he already ready, just waiting to drop the bomb? Or did he, like, slow things down to get right to where he wanted to? It's not a coincidence that we were at this stage when he just happened to be ready.
Right.
So
Yeah, I mean, everything's orchestrated. That's what he keeps saying in that chapter.
So I was going on to chapter 5.
Okay.
Page 13. When we see Veidt again, and he's preparing for a talk with a toy company.
Okay, so the hitman.
Right.
Yeah.
So at this point here, how far are we, by the way?
40 minutes.
Okay.
So
at this point here, what we're looking at is he's had his conversation with Rorschach, and Rorschach's like, hey, at least I didn't whore myself out and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
So Veidt's getting ready. He's gonna be meeting with these toy guys, and they're like, his secretary, she says, the toy people, they want some new characters in the Ozymandias line. Maybe some of your major villains. And he goes, the major villains are all dead. And the whole idea is like, well, you need some villains, someone for your toys to fight, and he's like, well, the major villains are all dead because, like, the only villain you have right now are these real life threats, you know?
Yeah.
And then, of course, as he's talking, and they're talking about death and the Egyptian motif and all that kind of stuff, the assassin appears out of nowhere, unfortunately kills the secretary, and then, of course, Veidt stops him, but he's not able to stop the guy from killing himself, with the cyanide poison capsule.
Oh, I think Adrian's actually putting the cyanide capsule in his mouth.
Well, he is. I just didn't want to tell the listeners that. I'm playing it up as if, like, as we're reading through it, but right.
Oh, they know if they're watching this, they know by now. This is spoiler heavy, so.
It's kind of funny how these cops are there and they're like, Mr. Veidt, stand back. We can handle it. Really? Really, Rent-A-Gun? Do you think that you can handle it more than Veidt?
Well, let me ask my secretary about that. Oh, wait!
And I love this where the guy dies, and then Veidt sits down, and he goes, call the toy people and cancel the extension of the Ozymandias line. If they ask why, just tell them I don't have any enemies.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. It's like, tell them I don't have any enemies. But the other part of that is, so he's got the meeting of the toy people. We know that this is all a setup. So this guy was coming here at that time, right? He's meeting with the toy people. We know that he's going to, miss killing Adrian, and Adrian's going to kill him.
Right.
And then what he says here in the last panel is, call the toy people and cancel the extension of the Ozymandias line. If they ask why, tell them I don't have any enemies. So at that point, what he does is he stops the Ozymandias toy line.
Mm-hmm. Or the extension of it.
Right. Well, I mean, if you stop the extension, you're not making any more toys, right? Because we've decided that that's it. But what he's also doing is, the Ozymandias toys serve to do what? They're action figures.
Yeah.
So you take them and you play with them, and the good guy fights the bad guy.
Right.
They just said they needed more bad guys for him to beat up. I'm stopping the toy line. What I'm also doing is I'm stopping this idea, this notion of kids fighting, like the bad guys, because where I'm taking us now is to this new era. We've got to take that old mindset and put it away. Otherwise, we're going to perpetuate and keep carrying that over into this new world.
Right.
So then I'm like, I don't have any enemies. We're going to cancel the toy line here. And even the thing where it's like this whole thing, because I think he says that this whole thing was because of Rorschach. because your whole mass killer theory, right? There was no other reason for this guy to show up there except for to kind of keep Rorschach, kind of thinking about that, or to be like, oh, maybe that's really what's going on. Don't dig any deeper.
Yeah. It was just to throw Rorschach off the scent.
And so, man, of course, he puts it to his advantage. But that whole thing there is like, I don't have any enemies. He doesn't have any enemies. Even if this guy was trying to kill mass killer, it was a mass killer thing. He's not an enemy. He's just he's just a guy that's like, I don't think that whatever reason these guys should have existed or something. But Rorschach's mass killer theory, though, is only shared amongst them because nobody else except for them knows that Blake was a comedian. Right. So this is just a random thing to everybody else. It's not even an enemy. It's just like that whole idea is like, everybody loves Veidt. You never hear a bad word about it. Even when the like in the movie when he's being interviewed, because it's not in the book, and he goes, and the guy's saying all this stuff, and Veidt goes, I'm not hearing a question. The guys just tell all this stuff. He's like, yeah, but do you have a question for me? Right. So it's like all of that is like, he really is, not necessarily loved, but respected among everybody. Right. And and I think almost in a sense where he's looked up to by people. Because he is the self-made guy. He's the guy that's ushered us all in there. And of course, we find out, he's the guy that's also bringing us clean energy. Yeah. Well, I shouldn't say clean energy because I think during this time there's not technically like dirty energy, but he's the guy that's bringing us, unlimited, bountiful energy.
Yeah. The electric cars and all that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and then he's back out of the picture for a lot of it, because so much of it is them getting back into the action and performing the jailbreak.
Which is interesting because it's not, him not being a part of anything or being out of the picture, it's not by chance. It's because like a true puppeteer, you don't see the puppeteer. You just see the puppets. Right. And, he shows up long enough and then he's gone. So I just got to say, you saw that just then, right? And I don't think everyone knows that before. Yeah. As we're watching the Watchmen movie, we actually get to the point where comedian just burned the map. Yeah. And of course, Ozymandias is starting to formulate his plan here. But did you see his lighter?
Yeah, it had the Silk Spectre on it.
Right.
Yeah, I'd never noticed that before. So yeah, that's really cool.
So,
or I guess considering what he tried to do to Silk Spectre, it's a little fucked up, but nice, very nice.
So, just pointing out in the book here, this is chapter 8, and it's Hollis Mason is making his pumpkin because, of course, it's going to be Halloween. And after he carves the pumpkin out and he puts the candle inside, there's a bit of pumpkin gut that's fallen on the outside of the pumpkin. And of course, it's the bloody smiley face.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy how many places that's hidden. I notice it more and more every time I read it.
So while all this is going on, and they're breaking Rorschach out of prison and everything else, Veidt's doing his thing. He's there. He's doing his thing. Mm-hmm. So, I was gonna say the one thing that is Veidt, but we're not talking about because it's not Veidt, but it is Veidt. Are the missing people?
Oh yeah, the artists and the scientists and the writers.
Yeah. So I think that now will probably be a good time to kind of draw this to a close, and we'll start the next episode off with the missing people.
Sounds good.
All
right. So check us out next time for part 2 of our evaluation
of the smartest man on the cinder.
Possibly homosexual.
Possibly.
Remind me to investigate that later.
The guy who has no enemies. All right, everybody. My name is Turk182.
And I'm Acomi.
And we will catch you next time. The Watchmen Files, Ozymandias Part 2.
Bye, y'all.
Dang, yo.
All right there, folks. That was Our Moms Think We're Funny. Let's give him a hand.